Blessings and welcome to the path to freedom. This beautiful path where we get to continuously set ourselves free to soar in ever expanding love and joy and peace and harmony and abundance and wholeness and beauty. And where we simultaneously get to set us free from fear and worry and doubt and these lower vibrations that are so running amok in the world. My name is Daniel Roquillo, and as always, I'm deeply grateful and honored that you're choosing to join me on this path, this beautiful path of awakening, of living the good life. So today we are talking about how there's a season for everything, how everything unfolds with such divine perfection. And we're coming back, as always, we're coming back to deepening our understanding of who and what God is, or spirit is, or the universe is, or the higher power, or whatever we choose to call it. That this loving presence, first of all, it truly is loving, it is truly good, it is benevolent, it is always for itself. And it is always moving with perfection. It is always expressing itself perfectly. And while this divine perfection may not always coincide and resonate with our human calendars and our times, schedules, and all of that, we're wise to trust that whenever something happens, it is the perfect time for it to happen. That God always and God alone knows what needs to happen and when it needs to happen and how it needs to happen. And this is particularly in congruence with where I am right now, as I'm in the process of expansion yet again. And I'm more or less constantly being pulled between the ego's need to want to control, to want to micromanage, to want to make it happen, and especially to want to see how it demonstrates, how it manifests. And that still small voice that is beckoning me and that is urging me. And this is the growing part in me. The ego is dissolving, and this the part in me that knows my oneness with the spirit, that is expanding. But that part, that voice is speaking of how everything is working out beautifully, how everything is working just according to God's plans and all of that. And for those of you who have tuned in before, I absolutely love nature as a teacher, as a source of inspiration. And I was observing, I was out on the I was sitting out on my lawn the other day, and I was observing our house is pretty much surrounded by lilac bushes and hedges. And I was observing a group of lilacs, and I became aware that, well, we're moving into summer. This is the month of June, the beginning of the month of June. And I became aware that there's a season for everything in nature. I mean, the lilacs, in the early spring, the leaves begin to be produced and they begin to show. And in that, there are little buds on each branch that is the birthplace of the extension or the expansion of that particular branch. So the spring is a time and the season for expansion in nature. And then as the leaves are now all unfolded and as the lilacs are in full bloom, we're moving into summer, and summer is the space of substantiating, of I was going to say balancing. That's not it. It is the time. It is the space for embodying the expansion that has happened. So the expansions of the branches and the twigs, in the beginning, they're all soft and fragile, very moisty. Now they're moving into hardening and thickening. So there's an embodiment of the expansion that has happened. And this embodiment is going to continue throughout summer and fall. And then there's late fall and winter and early spring, which is the time for rest and rejuvenation. And this is absolutely assisting me in releasing and letting go of my impatience, of my egoic tendency to want to get there as fast as possible. And if the ego had its way, I would get there if there's ever any there to get to, but I would get there yesterday. I would already be there. So the things that are coming into manifestation in my life now, the ego, had it had its way, they would have come into manifestation yesterday or like a week ago. So observing the lilacs and becoming aware of this beautiful comings and goings of seasons, and that everything has its own season. There's a season for everything. There's a season for rebirth. There's a season for new birth. There's a season for stabilization of that which has been born. There's a season for expansion. There's a season for rest. There's a season for gathering, like, cats do, and other animals as well, but cat animals like cats and lions and cougars and whatnot, when they prepare to leap, they sort of crouch together, and then they make their leap into expansion. Only the next time they're about to make a leap, they crouch together once again. So there's a contraction and there's an expansion. Contraction, expansion. And in our lives, there's expansion and there's embodiment of that expansion. Stabilization of that expansion, integration of that expansion. So we're never in a continuous space. And I'm very much talking to myself right now, because this is something that I need to treat myself with. Trusting that when I'm not in a space of expansion, it is simply because I need to be in a space of non-expansion. And when things are moving on the surface, then it is the perfect time for that movement to occur, to happen. My wife shared something the other day. Earlier this spring, she planted these geraniums in different pots, and quite a lot of them actually. And some of these geraniums she put in the kitchen window, where they would get a lot of sunlight, thinking that they would speed up, having access and being flooded with all this light would speed up their growth process. And it did. Some of the geraniums, those that were not able to fit in the windows, she put in a cupboard or a walk-in closet. So they had access to pretty much no light at all. And as one would have guessed, and as she guessed, the geraniums that were placed in the sunlight, they were the ones that grew the fastest. However, she came to me yesterday and she shared that the geraniums that were put in the closets, they didn't grow as fast, but now they are the ones that are the tallest. They are the ones that are the most vibrant in color. They are the most powerful and that have the strongest stems. Their leaves are bigger. They have not yet begun to bloom as the ones in the windows have. But this all speaks to, and I've used this quote quite a lot, how we can never, ever, I don't know who said it, it doesn't matter, but we cannot in any way, shape, or form improve the efficiency of spirit. We can try to speed it up, but whenever we try to speed nature up, it is always at the cost, at the expense of quality. On some level, always at the expense of quality. And as this beautiful example shows, putting these plants in direct sunlight, they grew faster, but it was at the expense of the quality of the plant. They are not as colorful, they are not as powerful, they are not as magnificent as the ones being allowed to grow at its own pace in darkness. So all this to say that we are so wise. Once again, we keep coming back to trusting. We keep coming back to trusting the goodness and the perfection of spirit, that God always expresses itself perfectly. And while we may have preferences as to when something is to manifest or how it is to manifest, we're wise to trust that it will manifest when the timing is perfect for the manifestation to happen. And if we try to force it, we're actually ending up, first of all, when we're trying to force it, we're coming from the vibration of lack, we're coming from the vibration of scarcity, we're coming from the vibration of fear and worry and doubt. And as the sacred laws can only reflect that and mirror back to us the substance and the essence of what we think about the most, what we talk about the most, what we feel about the most, when we are moving from fear, all we're doing is calling the manifestation, the substance of the fear into our experience. And second of all, when we're trying to push, when we're trying to hurry up, when we're trying to force, we are draining the quality of whatever it is that we are calling into our experience. So we're so wise to trust that there is a season for everything. And spirit alone knows when that season begins and when it ends. So God's timing is always perfect. Spirit is never late, never early. It always shows up right on time. It always expresses itself with divine perfection. There was something else that I caught that I wanted to share with regards to this. I don't remember it. So it's probably not important. So this is the invitation for us to take an honest look at our lives, to take an honest look at the creative endeavors that we are involved in, that we are engaged in, to take an honest look at where are we trying to push or force or make anything happen? Where are we harboring impatience where manifestation is concerned? So become aware of that. That's the invitation. And then obviously the questions are, so what is it for the manifestation to happen, for me to come into greater trust of spirit? What is it that we need to release and let go of in terms of judgments, in terms of habits, in terms of ways of moving, what we're talking about, what we're thinking about. So what is it that we need to release and let go of? And flipping that coin, what is it that we need to develop and cultivate within ourselves? Well, for me, I need to release and let go of my tendency, or the ego's tendency, to want to be impatient, to want to see something happening as quick as possible. Just like those geraniums. Speed does not equal quality. Quantity does not ever equal quality. God knows nothing of quantity. God only knows about quality. And when we give whatever we are involved in, when we give it permission to unfold in its own timing, like there is a space for expansion, there is a space for the unfoldment of the leaves, there's a space for flowers coming into bloom, there's a space for withering or season for it all. So we're wise to trust it. So what is it that we need to develop and cultivate within ourselves to establish that trust, to deepen that trust, so that we may move through the world in ever-expanding peace, ever-expanding joy, ever-expanding love and harmony and wholeness, regardless of whether or not something shows up when we want it to show up or not. So yeah. Until we meet again, I absolutely bless all of our days, and I bless all of our ways, knowing, feeling in absolute identity that all is well, that something wonderful is happening, that everything is working for the highest good. With much love, many blessings. Namaste.